We're back again with Vera Wheeler. Aunt Vera, when were you first married?
In 1936.
What was your husband's name?
Vern Elwell.
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 How did you meet him?
At the time I got out of high school and took a little beauty course and went to work Ben Vline's. Estes' brother-in-law had a barber shop and went to work in a little beauty shop behind his barber shop, and Vern came in to get his hair cut up in front of the barber shop. And I guess he saw me, and anyway, he wanted Ben to introduce us, and that's where I met him, in the barber shop.
Well, when were y'all married now?
We were married in June of 36. I got out of high school in 33, and then we married in 36.
Where were y'all married?
In Seminole.
In Seminole?
Mm-hmm.
Was it a big wedding?
No, we had it over at Faye's. Faye and Leland lived at the in a Gulf camp. Leland worked for the oil company, so they had a company house, and we had it in Faye's house.
I see.
And there was several of, I don't know how, not a big wedding, but just a
big family wedding. What was his occupation?
He worked for Gulf Oil Company.
I see. How much age difference were there in the two of you?
Yeah, well, let's see, I was 21 and he was 40.
40, quite different.
Yeah, he was, at that age, like I've told Barbara one time, I said when Monty was about 40, I said the difference between me and her daddy then would be like if Monty had turned around and married Shawla. That'd be about like that. But you know, I didn't notice that difference. He was mature, and I didn't notice the age. Probably as we got older, I know we probably wouldn't have never noticed the difference because we would have gotten older together, you know. So I probably wouldn't have never noticed that much difference in our age.
How long were y'all married before his death?
We were married about 10 or 11 years.
10, 11 years.
He got sick. Barbara was, Barbara was born, we were married in 36, and Barbara was born in 1940, December 1940. And then he got sick, about in 41 or 2, began having this some kind of ulcers or something. And he had to go to hospitals at Sulphur, and they finally sent him to Chicago Veterans Hospital. And then they finally sent him to Oklahoma City, and he passed away in 1947. So.
I see. What did you do with your life after he passed away?
Well, after he passed away, before he passed away, we went, the company more or less put him on some kind of a retirement thing, and we went to Seminole and bought us a house. And we just lived there about, we were probably, Barbara was 5 when we moved to Seminole. And we were going to move that fall, and she could start school in Seminole if she was 5. And she was 5 in 4th of January. So she was 5 in December. So we sent her on down to Leon and Janet's and let her get started school. Then we moved to Seminole in 40, let's see, can't remember when we moved down there, because we lived there about a year before he died. And then after he passed away, I sold the house and stored my furniture and moved in the house with Mom.
I see.
And
is that the same house that she had in
that little house in town?
Yeah, I don't remember the street.
You don't remember the little house?
I remember the house.
Yeah,
I don't remember the street it's on. I remember seeing the house.
On North University. And like I've told Barbara, I couldn't have been more welcome, you know, but yet I wasn't settled or anything. And then, I guess we lived there about...
Were you working during this time?
No. I started Barbara's school, and we stayed there at Mom's, stored my furniture, and then that... this was in June, and then in December, Fernie and Carolyn and Barbara and Mom and I went up to Faye's. Faye lived up Webb City, then went up there for Christmas. And Herschel lived next door to Faye. Well, I'd known Herschel in high school back in Seminole. Yeah, and so they were all going to go out on a party. Jeannie lived there. Jeannie was just in high school. I think she was a senior in high school. And she was going with some fella. And Jeannie, at this time, I don't know if I'll tell this or not. Vernie and Harold was separated, yeah. Well, I'll tell it a little bit. She won't care, will she?
No.
She won't care. Anyway, they were having a little bit of problems. And she and Carolyn was down, and so we went up to Faye's for Christmas. So Jeannie got Vernie a date. So they came up with this idea that I ought to go with them. And of course, Vern had been gone about 6 months, I guess, or 6, I guess it was. And I said, oh, no, I didn't want to go. Yeah, we're going to go hunt up Herschel, and we're going to all go over to Ponca City, go dancing. And I said, oh, no, I don't want to go. And Mom and Faye said, well, I think you ought to go. So Vernie and Jeannie, they go into Shider, that's a little oil town, and they find Herschel. And they want to know, ask Herschel if he wants to go with us and go dancing. Well, Lord, he says, yeah, he's excited, about going. So anyway, we go out partying that night, go over to Ponca City, and Jeannie...
This is in, what, about 1948?
No, this would be still in 1947. So we go out partying, and by this time, Jeannie's going, I believe she's going with Dano. Yeah, she was with Dano. That's her. She wasn't married to him yet, though. And me and Vernie was with some fella, and we go over there and we have a party. And another couple that I knew that was already married that lived in Webb City went with us, with Herschel and I. But they went in their car. So they decide they're going to go on home and leave me and Herschel to go in his car. So they tell the tale that we stayed out all night, but we really didn't. But anyway.
We had a good time anyway.
We had a good time. That's how I met Herschel. And then he kept coming down to Seminole, and Miss Hicks lived next door to Mom. So he'd stay with Miss Hicks over next door, and then we'd spend our days together. So then finally we decided we wanted to get married. And
when did y'all get married?
We got married in April of 48.
Where were you married?
We were married over at Pawhuska, Oklahoma. That's the county seat of up in the Osage where Herschel lived. Herschel was working for Skelly Oil Company. And we got married over at Pawhuska. And then we moved into a little apartment in Shider.
Well, you and Uncle Herschel were about the same age, is that right?
Yeah, Herschel was like a year older than me. We'd gone to high school together, and Herschel graduated in 32, and I graduated in 33. He'd gone into the service, though, and then he was just back. This was during World War II, and he had just come back and gone to work for Skelly. Well, he was working for Skelly Oil Company when he went into service, and then he came back, and that's when we moved up to Shider.
Do you know much about his childhood, or was he from Seminole?
Yeah, well, no, he was born up at around Tulsa, up around Sapulpa and Kiefer up in there, and then his dad worked for the Gulf Oil Company, and they were transferred to Seminole. I think Herschel must have been like a junior in high school when they moved to Seminole, and he went through high school there, and then I think the year he got out of school, they moved up in the Osage. That was up around Webb City and Shider where oil field was. And then he left there and went to, I think out in New Mexico to work. And when the war came, then that's when he went into the Navy. And then when he came back, why, that's...
How did Barbara accept her new daddy?
Well, that's the only daddy she ever really knew. See, she was like, when I first met Herschel, Barbara would have been like, she just started school.
Does Barbara remember her real dad?
I don't know. She tells me that I think what she remembers...
Is people talking about it.
Yeah, and she says she remembers the funeral. Back then, people sometimes took the body home and left them, and so they brought Vern out to the house. Like I said, we lived out north of town here, and she tells me she remembers them bringing him out there, and said her and Patsy and Izetta was playing out in the driveway, and they had made some little sand hill or something in the driveway with gravels or something, and she says she remembers this, and she calls it an ambulance, but it was a hearse bringing Vern out there. But I don't think she's never told me how much she remembers about him. Now, Izetta tells me she remembers coming out there when we lived, and Vern fixing her and Barbara poached eggs. Now, Izetta would have been about 6, and Barbara would have been about 5. But Barbara's never really talked. It's just always been Herschel, because that's what she to her, that was her daddy. She was crazy about Herschel.
When did Uncle Herschel die?
He died July the 12th in 84.
Okay. What was his cause of death?
He had cancer.
Cancer.
Of course, you remember Herschel.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You,
everybody remembers Herschel. Do you feel like you've had a complete life thus far?
I really do.
I know you're not giving up life by any means.
No, really, I look back and I think that I've had a pretty good, that's what I tell them, I think I've had a pretty good life. Things have gone pretty smooth. I don't accept changes very much, but things have gone real smooth, and I think I consider it a real good life.
Well, when was Barbara born?
In December 13th, 1940.
Was she born in Seminole?
No, she's born in Shidler, Oklahoma.
Was there any significance in how you chose her name, Barbara Ann, or was it?
The doctors had a daughter, and her name was Barbara, and I just thought that Barbara was pretty. And where I came up with Ann, I don't know, but I just thought Barbara Ann was a pretty name.
Well, Barbara grew up in Seminole, is that right?
Well, really, she was like 5 she would have probably been, 5, because she started school. And then we lived there until Herschel and I got married. And then we moved to Shidler. And we lived in Shidler about 2 years. And Herschel was transferred to Valma, Oklahoma. That was out of Duncan. So we moved to Duncan first, and she started school there. And then after they built company houses out of gasoline plant, we moved out to Valma, and she graduated from high school at Valma Alma High School. So.
And of course, she married Monty.
She met Monty on a band trip one time when I think he was drum major of Ada High School, and she was a drum major, and they went on a band trip somewhere, and they met there. And then they finally got together again when she went to college over at Ada and got married.
And they have 2 children, Brett and Mark.
Right.
And of course, they're now married. As far as your childhood, do you feel like that Grandpa and Grandma were more strict than, say, the parents of today are on you kids? Of course, I know there was a lot of kids around, and do you feel like that they were, gave you more responsibility than maybe kids today have, or something of that nature?
Well, I think we each one kind of had a little chore we did growing up. But I kind of remember Papa and Mama. I don't remember them really ever having to get on us kids a whole bunch. And Mom was bad about pinching. I mean, that was her way of, if we were traveling anywhere, she'd reach back. And I don't remember Papa ever whipping me but one time. Seemed like we just knew to...
What'd you do to deserve a whipping?
I just can't remember. I've thought about that, but the only time I remember is just him one, and you just get one whipping from your dad, and you don't... You'll remember that one, I think, because it's pretty rough.
Well, I'm sure the boys got...
I'm sure they got some rough ones. But really, I don't remember them being that... Seemed like we just automatically knew that we were supposed to do certain things, and that they just expected certain things out of us, I guess, Rodney, because we didn't...
Well, Did the Bible and religion have a big influence on your early years?
I think that's what it was. See, we went to church all the time. That's all we knew. We didn't have a lot of entertainment like they have now. We had to go to church every Sunday, and then Sunday night, and then they had what we call young people's meeting as we grew older. But that's all we really knew was church. By the time we grew, now I'm sure the older kids maybe didn't go to church that much, maybe, because I think Mom was a charter member. I don't think my dad had joined the church when she did, but by the time us kids came along, that was our life. We automatically went to church on Sunday and Sunday night and anything through the week, and I mean that was just part of growing up. We didn't know anything.
Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about as far as growing up, or any?
I can't think of anything just real special other than just like I said, when I was little, that was part of my big highlight of my life when I had that. And then with the growing up, and then as we got a little older, I can remember us making this trip to
Let's put
California.
Something into perspective for the younger kids. You didn't have a car when you were young. Is that right?
No, us kids didn't.
No, what about your
Oh,
dad?
yeah.
He had a car?
Now, the time us kids came along, now Esty said they didn't have when she first grew up. Yeah, my dad always had a real good car. He traded cars real often. We had, I remember the year we went to California, I would have been like 15, and there was me and Vernie and Leon and Tommy. And Mom put in the back, cars were big then, she put all of our food would be underneath between the back seats, and then she put this big feather bed on top of all this stuff, and we went to California. We were gone a month. There was another family in another car went with us. So,
now, was that just the four younger kids?
Four younger kids. And we were gone a month. The Earls, they were people who lived on a farm in the section just north of us. We called them, a mile, they called them sections back then. And they lived in the section north of us. And Mr. and Ms. Earls had 3 kids at that time. They had Roberta and Lucille and Buell. So they were in their car, and Mom and Papa and me and Vernie, Leon, Tommy was in ours. And we started out to California on this trip. This was would have been back in 1929. And like I said, they put this big old feather bed back there, and us 4 kids rode back there. We'd sleep a while, and then we got out, I think somewhere in, I believe the first fruit we ever found was around Phoenix. And Papa bought a big sack of oranges and just put them back in the back end with these kids. We just eat an orange or squeeze the juice out and pitch them out. And we went to California and was gone a month. And that's the first time I remember Help Yourself Laundry. We stopped, and Miss Earls and Mom went in this laundry and would do our clothes up, being gone a month. And that's the first time I ever saw a Help Yourself Laundry. But we came on back. We had my 16th birthday coming back. It was in August. We came back. And
well, don't you think that Grandpa and Grandma Holderfield would be proud of us today having these reunions?
Oh, they would. And they'd be proud of what we have. Like Janet and I was talking about the other day. We were sitting out here talking about, she said, we've come a long ways. When like Leon and Janet and Herschel and I started out, I think that we've counted up, it's been probably 35 or almost 40 years ago. We'd go over at Sulphur and rent tents, and we'd camp out on weekends. That was our thing. And then we just gradually, like she said, we got up to where we are now. And then, they'd be so proud of all of you kids. And,
well, I'm sure there's a lot of kids that would like to have known their...
Well, you'd like to have known...
grandparents and great-grandparents, in some cases great-great-grandparents.
Well, see, that's what I don't remember anything about my grandparents, really, other than just now, Mom's mother lived with Papa and Mama for a while, and Esty and Archie always remembered her. But see, she died probably about the time I was born, so I don't really remember what I've heard. But, they would have... Now, Mom especially, and I think all the kids down to you, And probably, I don't know if Dana really remembers Mom not.
Well, she was 6 or 7.
So she probably does.
Well,
Yeah, I'm sure she does, because she spent some time with Mom. Yeah, she should remember Mom.
I only have one question left, and this has always been kind of a special question for you that I never understood. How did you get the name Aunt B?
I got the name Aunt B. Well, when Paula came along, Paula never could talk real plain right at first, and she couldn't say Vera. So she'd say Bea.
Oh, I see.
And that's how it come. Best I can remember. And then all of a sudden, all of your kids, Carolyn's kids, began to call me Aunt B, because no one can say Vera. It seemed like they couldn't put that V in there; they'd put B. So they started calling Aunt B. That's the best I can remember.
Well, thank you very much, Aunt
Well,
B.
Rodney, I've enjoyed it. I hope I have told you what I need to know. You need to know.
Well, I'm sure you have. We'll have a good reunion this year.